If you completely vanished tomorrow, leaving behind an invention that would unequivocally change the entire world, who would you trust to tell your story? Just imagine, for a second, the darkest corners of history. The brilliant minds whose names were literally erased from our textbooks just because they stepped onto a train and simply ceased to exist.
Welcome to Forgotten Mysteries Chronicles, where we dig into the stories history tried to bury. In today's explainer, we're looking at a case that is just deeply unsettling. We're going all the way down the rabbit hole on this one.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the genius and the father of motion pictures.
So to really understand this mystery, we first have to understand the man himself. Louis Le Prince was a towering figure, both literally and figuratively. He was a brilliant French artist and chemist who actually achieved motion pictures years before Hollywood was even a concept. The timeline here is absolutely critical. In 1888, Le Prince successfully shoots what's known as the Roundhay Garden scene. Now, it wasn't until 1891, 3 full years later, that Thomas Edison debuted his early celluloid film results, and it wasn't until 1894 that Edison opened his commercial parlors. Le Prince beat Edison and the Lumiere brothers to the punch by years, and whoever controlled this invention, well, they controlled the entire future of entertainment. The financial stakes were unimaginably huge.
Exactly, and he did it using this incredibly experimental 1888 single-lens device that he built right in his Woodhouse Lane workshop. By using Eastman paper negative film, he managed to capture moving images of his son, Adolphe, playing the accordion and his family just walking around a garden. He was capturing actual life at an estimated 7 frames per second. This wasn't just some abstract concept on a chalkboard, it was a working, breathing prototype. He had literally done it.
Which brings us to part 2. The Vanishing Act, September 16, 1890.
See, Le Prince knew exactly what he was sitting on. He was getting ready for this monumental trip to New York City to premiere his work and, most importantly, secure his international patents. But before crossing the Atlantic, he takes a quick trip to France. And guys, this is where it gets chilling. Step 1, he arrives in Dijon to visit his brother. Step 2, on September 16th, he boards the train bound for Paris. His brother literally watches him get on the train. Step 3, the train arrives in Paris. His friends are waiting for him at the station. But Le Prince, he's not on board. His heavy luggage is gone. There were no stops where he could have just slipped away unnoticed. It's a physically impossible locked room mystery right on a moving public train.
And you really have to consider the man himself. According to his assistant, Frederick Matson, Le Prince was 6'3". He was a massive, incredibly well-built guy. So how do you quietly kidnap or overpower a literal giant, along with all his heavy luggage, on a crowded train without a single passenger hearing a struggle or seeing anything? You just don't. Not unless something far more sinister was at play.
Let's move on to part 3, the motives and the Edison patent wars. Because as we uncover time and time again here on Forgotten Mysteries Chronicles, when there's an impossible crime, you always have to follow the money.
Spot on. Years after Le Prince vanishes, Thomas Edison starts suing the American Mutoscope Company for royalties, basically claiming he is the absolute sole inventor of cinema. But in 1898, Le Prince's widow and his son, Adolphe, step up to the plate. Adolphe actually presents his father's 1888 cameras right there in court to prove Edison wasn't the first. They put absolutely everything on the line to get Louis the recognition he deserved. But the court ultimately rules in Edison's favor. The family's hopes are just utterly dashed.
And if you thought the disappearance was the end of the tragedy, it really wasn't. In 1901, just a couple of years after testifying against Edison's massive empire, 28-year-old Adolphe Le Prince was found dead on Fire Island in New York. A gunshot wound to the forehead. The official ruling? Suicide. Just let that sink in for a second. The man who held the missing inventor's blueprints, the primary witness against a huge corporate monopoly, just ends up dead on a beach.
Part 4. Deciphering the theories. Was it suicide, accident, or murder?
We've got to line up the suspects and dissect the 4 most prominent theories surrounding that initial 1890 disappearance. First up is Christopher Rawlins's assassination theory. The idea here is that Edison's camp straight up murders Le Prince to protect those U.S. patents. Now, the evidence is circumstantial, sure, but his widow vehemently believed it. And Adolphe's subsequent death, it makes this theory terrifyingly plausible. But then you have film historian Jean Mitry's theory, which is fratricide. The motive here is family inheritance. The core evidence? Le Prince's brother was the absolute last person to see him alive. Mitry argues Le Prince never even got on that train to begin with.
Right. We also have the staged disappearance theory, citing massive debts or personal reasons, complete with an alleged sighting in Chicago in 1898. Though, honestly, there's basically zero historical proof of that. And finally, the suicide or drowning theory, supposedly driven by financial ruin.
Yeah, and regarding that drowning theory, back in 2003, researchers actually found a police archive photo of a drowned man pulled from the Seine in 1890, and he looked strikingly like Leprince. But here's the massive flaw that completely debunks it. The coroner's report for that specific corpse in the Paris morgue explicitly noted the height. The body was way too short to be our giant 6'3" inventor. The physical evidence completely contradicts the narrative. For sure, he did not drown in the Seine.
Let's get to part 5, the final verdict. A legacy erased.
Louis Leprince was officially declared dead in 1897, but his true fate is still heavily contested to this very day. So, here's my verdict. Looking at the sheer timing of it all, the fact that he was literally on his way to New York to secure his patents, followed by the highly suspicious death of his son who testified in court, I have to go with corporate assassination. I think he was taken out by hired hands before he could ever threaten those upcoming cinematic monopolies.
I hear you, I really do, but my verdict is fratricide. I think the whole locked room train mystery is just a distraction. I don't believe a 6'3" man gets kidnapped on a crowded public train. I think the real reason nobody saw him on that train to Paris is because his brother kills him back in Dijon for his share of the inheritance and then simply lied to the police about watching him board.
So, what do you think happened? Drop your theory in the comments down below. We literally read every single one. And if this explainer gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out. We're posting a brand new Forgotten Mystery every single day. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming tomorrow. Get ready because we are exploring H.H. Holmes' Murder Castle, America's first serial killer's hidden horror. It is an absolutely wild and terrifying dive into a building literally designed for nightmares.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Forgotten Mysteries Chronicles. Until tomorrow, stay curious
Stay skeptical.
and never stop asking what really happened.